Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course, of course. So I want to start off by getting an introduction of yourself. So maybe a bit background history and also why did you decide to come into this space?
So, hello everyone. Thank you, IXS. Thank you, Shara, for inviting me to join this fire chat. I'm Fernando, founder of Curio Capital and contributor to CurioDAO. For those of you who do not know me, I've been in the space for a decade by now. I started in 2013 as a speculator before, getting more familiar with various digital assets and going much deeper in 2018 by taking a course at Oxford in the space of blockchain strategy. And so at that point, I had previously worked for a VC as well as helped a couple of startups grow from idea all the way to revenue. And ultimately, one of them got acquired. The other one did an IPO here in Switzerland. And so I was looking for potential case studies, use cases of digital assets. And at this course, I was introduced to the tokenization of Picasso. So pretty much out of the class, I went on taking part of hackathons, on startups competitions, and this is basically how Curio was conceived. We connect with Vladimir, which is our co-founder, CTO, and with Valerie Halter, and so they in a way complemented my skills. And we basically use the blockchain regulatory framework that we pick up from the class to scout different jurisdictions and to research what would be the most ideal place to set up the entity. Fortunately, turns out here in Switzerland, you have a crypto valley with several ventures, basically Ethereum, NEAR, and several other foundations. And so it became clear that setting up basically the entity here in Switzerland was the place to go. And at that point, there were various regulatory changes taking place. Various countries were launching their blockchain initiative. And so by working together with these stakeholders, we proposed the idea to tokenize, a Ferrari, a collection grade rare car. And there was something about this project that they liked. Until then, they had rejected several other projects. But the case study of representing, a rare car that traditionally has been, very inaccessible for the great majority, whereas its price has developed over time positively due to the demand from many enthusiasts wanting to purchase these assets, made a lot of sense. So we started working with regulators over a journey of, I think, less than 12 months, actually. And we got the legal envelope file with them. They call it prospectus. And so these legal envelopes lay down the first milestone, the first stepping stone towards what would become tokenization of real world assets. Since then, our team of 11 folks who are very, savvy on the tech side have developed amazing, tools that support this ecosystem. We went on to, grow CurioInvest to over 2,000 users. We later launched additional, tools, including Rollup. We spin out CurioDAO that took care of, the Curio stablecoin project, as well as the so-called Capital DEX. And so today we have an ecosystem of several tools that in a way can represent a real world asset via this legal envelope. We work together with these regulators. And once you digitize this asset or tokenize it, you can then either trade it, you can either lock it as a collateral to get a loan, or you can use that liquidity to diversify across other digital assets. And so the study has been very exciting. We got support from a strong community. They've been following us interestingly over this whole period. I think one thing that sets us apart was, this rate of innovation, always, bringing up new tools. And so this, in a way, intrigued our community, and it created some very strong followers. And so we're at that stage that, we have tokenized over 1,000 assets, if I recall that correctly. Some of them use this regulatory framework out of Liechtenstein. Some of them use a regulatory framework out of Switzerland. The difference is on the level of security token or co-ownership. But so far, we have, in a way, tested, fine-tuned this process, and we're very excited about what's coming up later.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you mentioned you tokenized over 1,000 assets. Is that correct?
Right. So within the Rollup platform, there's various assets. You can find cars, watches, paintings. We also introduced music API last year. Coming up next, we're working on tokenizing commodities and real estate. And so, of course, lots of these projects require legal research and development, as well as fine-tuning some of these, tools that we have developed. But so far, we have launched several assets there. Ironically, one of the assets that have sold the most was these Mario Bros. Gaming cartridges. So you probably played when you were a child, Mario Bros. 1 on Nintendo. Turns out that the cartridge unpacked was sold out in auction for $2 million. And so one of our team members came up. He told us he identified this asset. We did the due diligence. It fit the criteria, and we placed it on the platform. And so we played with those two concepts. I feel the strength of the security token is really this, massive distribution, because you can, purchase a small amount under the protocol of ERC20, whereas the other ones, because of this co-ownership status, you basically, purchase maybe 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 50 or 1 out of 200. So it, in a way, addresses different thresholds in terms of pricing. Going forward, I could imagine if we tokenize, $100 million or a $50 million asset, we certainly will, use that, ERC20 or that granularity. Whereas if we tokenize, a wine that costs 1,000, 3,000, we will continue using the co-ownership model.
Interesting. So if I want to tokenize something, say I have like a bottle that's worth like $1 million, do I just contact you guys and show the verification that I own the asset? Then you guys tokenize this and it's on your platform. Someone can just jump on the platform and trade that. Is that how it works? Or do I have to actually send the bottle to you guys so you guys store it?
Right. So, long term, the whole world will be tokenized, right? And we put tools that make that happen. And these tools are decentralized. And they're increasingly more decentralized as the distribution of CGT, which is the main governance token, is completed. And the idea here is that the tools enable you to achieve this goal. Of course, as the project ramps up, we have laid down some thresholds in order to make sure that it develops sustainably. And so initially, the way it works is that we require you to leverage our network of current partners. And this, of course, includes, both custody, but also insurance. And so, for instance, the Ferrari was tokenized by an owner, and this owner decided to sell his tokens. So what he did was basically store this asset into a safe custody space, which is, by the way, one of the most amazing car garages in Germany. It's an adventure going there. There's so many gems there. And so once it is stored there, of course, there was again, a quality check, authenticity, status by experts. We then proceeded to insure this asset. And so this is, let's say, the custodial approach. And so we will most likely keep this custodial approach in-house or via partners, let's say via businesses that already do custody of this asset for the, let's say, near future. And so what this would enable us is to have, a sustainable ramp up. but the tools are there. And so what we're working long term, what we're thinking long term is that by basically providing the sort of KYC on your object, we will enable to expand it globally in a much faster way. Basically, we call it know your object. And so we've been working and contacting various partners, various affiliate service providers. One of them was Claros. The idea is actually rings a bell, whereas once you conduct a know your object, basically you also pledge some sort of skin in the game. And so if you commit fraud, then you lose that amount of capital that you pledge. And so you have, in a way, an incentive to make sure that the asset it's always kept in a safe condition and you don't double spend it or so. And so we're currently, fine-tuning that approach. But I mean, once we get there, basically it would essentially mean that anyone, equivalent to how you would sell an item on eBay or so, can simply submit an asset, create a profile for that asset, digitize it, get an NFT that represents that asset, even be able to both sell it or get a loan on that, and ultimately to chip it when the end buyer, which is no longer a trader, but rather a collector, wants to redeem it, basically. And so that's kind of the circle. And we see lots of benefits there because today already there's traders who are purchasing things on eBay to resell them and so forth. So it would just make their life a bit easier, put it this way.
Definitely. So what about the Ferrari? Where is that? Is that in your garage?
So the Ferrari is stored in a specialized garage that is, in a way, designed to protect this kind of heritage assets. What do I mean by that? These are specialized warehouses that are in a regulatory sole-free area, which means they have a special tax status and a special security. They're very safe, protected, and fire, climate control, and basically humidity and all this stuff. And so what you have inside are not only are definitely not cars that cost $10,000. You're looking at prestigious assets that are part of history, some of them above several $1,000,000. And so this is really an activity that is taken care by quite experts in the space, where basically over time they make sure that the car remain in proper state without increasing the kilometers on this odometer. And so what this means is that you have special machines that maybe roll it slightly, for sure charge all the equipment and keep it pristine. Even sometimes they protect it with some sort of special foil to avoid dust coming into the assets and so forth. So it's entire science, frankly. And we're very happy to have partnered up with Mechatronic. If you Google just on YouTube Mechatronic, you would see what I'm referring to. It's impressive, to say the least. And so definitely this is a specific type of asset. I mean, the car is over 1 million. These garages have cars over several, even 10 or 7, even more. And I think the last car that was sold by a museum from SS was over 150 million. So this is not a joke. You don't want to keep it, in a simple, garage and so forth. And so the same thing happens with fine art. You want to make sure that it's properly, climate control. It doesn't get humid and therefore damage the paintings and stuff like that. And so that's the first step. And the second step is, of course, we have a tier 1 insurance. In this case, we partner up with AXA, which is a rather traditional, it's not a, let's say, Web3 startup. So the idea here is that if the asset is stolen or damaged, the insurance in a way pays that value of the asset, of the initial value. And over time, as the asset, develops in price, there's ratings and so forth, then we may update that particular threshold, basically. And so this is all being taken care of. As you can tell, it requires some expertise. If you happen to, want to start collecting cars, you will have to get these contacts, this insurance, and this is a pain, especially if you want to do that for, let's say, for 10, for 20, for 50. And so today, instead, you have the opportunity to get a so-called CT1 and have, in a way, also the investors framework with the regulatory framework, and know directly that this is, in a way, a legit thing, put it this way, yes. And have exposure to that. I mean, it's amazing when you think, that you can now diversify into these various assets, yes.
Interesting. So, CurioInvest, you have the platform to tokenize assets, and then you have the NFT platform where you can trade this asset, and then you have a stable coin. Can you kind of explain to me the whole ecosystem, like everything CurioInvest has and what it is?
Absolutely. I mean, CurioInvest is on a mission to unlock value from non-liquid assets. And so what we've done in the last 4 years is essentially develop tools as well as a framework to achieve that. And to the core competence of Curio, we have 3 applications, which are multi-chain, meaning blockchain agnostic, meaning on Ethereum, on Scale, on several other layers. And so the idea here is that you need one tool that helps you digitize this asset, and this is Rollup. You can tokenize an asset. It's an NFT marketplace, equivalent, let's say, to other ones. We focus on real world asset powered by this regulatory framework. Fantastic. So now you have digitized a real asset. So what comes next? You can then either sell it, or you can leverage the open source dApps from our ecosystem. And so once you have digitized then this asset, you can then lock it into a vault, similar as you would lock, let's say, Ethereum on MakerDAO, and you can get a loan in the form of stable coins, right? So how does that work? The asset has a valuation, and this valuation is fed in the form of a price oracle. And basically, if the asset costs, let's say, 1 million, the vault provides you a so-called loan to value. Think of it as a pawn shop. You have a watch, you bring it, your watch costs 10K, they give you $2,000. So it's a loan to value for 20%. So this you receive in stable coins. It's the world's first real world asset stablecoin protocol. It has already some digital assets in the protocol itself. It has been fine-tuned by our team members and the community, and it's actually live. It's actually working. And so once you have these stable coins, you can then go to the second application called Capital Dex and basically start either diversifying your portfolio or pledging those stable coins, creating a liquidity pool, and extract some of the fees that come from the automated market maker transactions. And so let me ask you a question. If you had, let's say, an asset that is very valuable at your home or so, let's say you have a Picasso and it costs $10 million. And by clicking a few buttons, you could tokenize it, you could pledge it as a loan, you could lock that liquidity into an automated market maker and start earning some rewards. Would you do it? And so the answer has been extraordinarily positive. When we pitched that idea, I understood we found product market fit, because it turns out there's a lot of value locked in assets. And so these assets are generating no rewards, no yields, nothing, a big zero. And so by going into these applications, you can unlock the liquidity and pledge it as a collateral and start earning something. And sure, you start earning some, governance tokens. Maybe you can sell them. Maybe you can use them to steer the ecosystem and so on. But this is the vision how, we lay down and decentralized infrastructure that augment this regulatory framework that we achieved so far.
That's really interesting. I think that there's a lot of opportunity for that. But what do you think about pooling these assets into one security token? I assume like the car has a value of a million, and then you have maybe a watch, 500,000, all of these different things. But would it be something that you guys would consider in the future to kind of make kind of funds or ETFs type of things of these assets?
Right. I mean, so here's the thing. Once we lay down these blocks, then they're in a way composable. So you can create combinations with them. And so the way we see it forward is that it is very unlikely that I will have expertise on all these types of asset classes. And it is very unlikely that a specific, entity could have also expertise on that. It is actually more likely that someone who is an expert on that particular car, not even cars, that particular type of car, has a better, say than the rest, because it's so fragmented. And so the way I see it forward, or the way we envision it forward, is that there will be, so CurioDAO will be in a way seeding DAOs that take ownership on, let's say, either one asset or an index of that particular asset class. Maybe the Ferrari asset class, the Ferrari DAO. So it will hold all the top 10 tokenized Ferraris, the Picasso DAO. And so folks with that expertise would start in a way steering decisions of that particular DAO. And so by having, let's say, several thousand assets tokenized, we lay down those, components, so that then we can proceed by seeding those DAOs with the tools that we created, so that the community can, in a way, start, having a say and deciding, okay, actually, we might actually exit this asset, or we should save to purchase this other asset that came up on a specific action. And so by repeating this activity, we hope that CurioDAO and together with CurioInvest grow, become a quality challenger out of Europe that leverages the regulatory framework and decentralized ecosystem, DeFi in a compliant manner, in a scalable manner, non-custodial in the future with this know your object, and that really, in a way, tokenizes all these real-world assets, that uses this crypto economics to steer the best, input from the community on the parameters they want to see on that ETF that you mentioned, and that ultimately rescues all these assets that perhaps are stored at a basement where no one sees them and where no one knows about them. And so we have this idea that by seeding this out, this could be the way to go, and we could leverage also this knowledge from the community as well.
Definitely. So do you have any other or new upcoming listings coming?
Right. So we've been quite, entertained with asset originators. As we communicated earlier, we took part of various, events where we connected with these folks. Coming up next, I mean, I cannot say details until it's fully, let's say, launch. But basically, it's a 8-digit asset. So it's an order of magnitude higher that we're planning to launch. It's a new asset class in the commodities place, but it's also a new framework. Think of it like a regulatory framework that enables you to replicate it to many other commodities that are traditionally not traded at an exchange, that are basically OTC, where you basically call per phone and want to buy a few tons. And so we're very excited about that, because I mean, that itself could become a phenomenal opportunity. And then the second one is, of course, this real estate. It's still very early, but it's one of the biggest hotel chains, and so still some discussions on how to structure it and so on. But I mean, clearly, tokenization demand for tokenization is increasing. People understand what an NFT is now. In 2018, when we launched our first NFTs, no one had a clue. And the topic of tokenization is also increasingly becoming more relevant for the industry itself. I feel in the last few years, the main objection was nothing else than why investing in a safe haven asset and a real world asset when I can 10x on a digital one. But as Luna happened and several other events took place, people became simply more aware to diversify, to start creating what I call 21st century portfolio. A little bit of gold, maybe some real estate, some fine arts, some alternatives, and sure, digital assets, but not only digital assets. And so I feel the time is getting ready, prime. I recently came across a research from Gartner that said it's about 3 years from today, and so I feel that's a little bit of a stretch. However, it might be, but that means that we will have certainly the best or the most advanced infrastructure to get there, and so we're very excited. Also, at Curio, what's coming next, not only on the asset side, but also on the infrastructure side, it's also more integrations with various protocols. We're very excited about what our team has built on the Polkadot end. They call it parachain and so forth. So this increases security, enhances, basically interoperability. And so there are some very exciting announcements coming out soon, and we're somewhat limited because of these third parties and legal requirements, but I mean, as soon as it comes out, we should be sharing it with your community as well.
That's awesome. So what about the future of CurioInvest? Do you have anything in particular really planned?
The future of CurioInvest is basically to be positioned as, a quality challenger for the tokenization of real world assets, to have, a rock solid framework, and to increase the TLV so that we can, integrate other stablecoin protocols so that we can unlock more liquidity. What do I mean by that? We're actively approaching regulators. We're actively applying for sandboxes where we can showcase our innovation. It is often the case that tech moves much faster than regulatory frameworks. And so a lot of our products are in a way beta, or they're, they're not even launched. They're on the GitHub repertoire. And so we want to test the waters. We want to increase the certainty of these digital assets. And we're applying for these sandboxes here in Europe. And so that's a key, let's say, a key task, a key goal. Then the second part is basically, increasing interoperability. So clearly we cannot unlock all the liquidity from these non-liquid assets on our own. And the idea that there's, interest in real world assets across the whole crypto ecosystem, and this interest is increasing, it's fantastic. It's almost like this is exactly what we envisioned a few years ago, and now it's happening. So I'm very thankful for our community to follow us, and for our team to push this idea and believe in it. But basically what's happening today is that all these stablecoin protocols are like, hey guys, we need to diminish our exposure to specific digital assets. They are either, very volatile, or they don't generate yield, or, they might be sized in a specific bank or jurisdiction. So why don't we work with Curio? We take on those real assets, we put them in our vaults, and we give them a loan. And so there's an integration with MakerDAO ongoing, several steps. The first one was already completed. We're now applying again for the second step. But there's also discussions with other protocols here in Switzerland, and and also within other layers. And so going forward, I would like to see CurioInvest as the go-to destination where you can tokenize an asset, resell it if you want, but also get a loan in a way that you can, unlock the liquidity of your asset instantly. And so that is fantastic. To many of these assets, you can already do so, but you need to, in a way, fly maybe to Luxembourg, have, a very cumbersome, high-touch experience. We have the tools. We have, we're leveraging blockchain, and it provides that transparency, immutability. So by fine-tuning those gaps, I'm confident we can get there. Now, clearly, I mean, for someone who has been a decade in the industry, I've seen companies come and go. And so the reality of startups is that, they're currently exploring business models and so on. And so it's very important to have customer revenue, to not spend investors' capital in marketing only. And so it's quite unfortunate that many companies have just disappeared throughout this time, even if they had a good idea. So at Curio, we've been quite cautious, but of course, I would love to see a little bit more marketing exposure. I would love to see a stronger sales team that actually outreaches to these wealthy individuals or family offices or businesses to tokenize their asset. And so far we've been extraordinarily conservative. Most of us are doing a lot of stuff. So I would love to see a little bit of a bigger team and hopefully some high quality investors, together with the ones that have already joined, to our boards and so forth. So that's more or less how I see the next 5 years outlook.
Yeah, yeah. So I got a few questions from the floor here. I think we can move on to that before we wrap things up. There's a question here asking, creating a vault for borrowing/lending currently costs $100 in FBs. Will there be any changes to make this cheaper, or is that just the cost of doing business?
This is a good question. Clearly, accessibility and and of course blockchain gas fees and so forth are sometimes an issue, especially for layer ones. What we're seeing is, nevertheless, that most of the transactions happen today still on layer one. However, there's good indicators that suggest layer two activity is increasing, especially over the last quarter. Therefore, I am of the opinion that as more transactions move to layer twos, therefore the price for such activities will likely decrease. Now, the reality is that the technology, the tools are still early stage, so they still got a lot to improve. But and this is why I guess economies of scale matter. So perhaps if you have a $20, a $100 exposure, you don't need to take a loan on that. But if you have, let's say, $10 million allocation, you want to take 2 million, this 100 or 200 or so fees really don't play a role. So we have to think about what is the 20% of hardcore activities that have the 80% impact into the growth and so forth. And so this, of course, means sometimes having a very limited community manager experience and marketing exposure and so on. But we're really, in a way, allocating all the resources a startup might have into those 20% that have the 80% impact. And so probably as the community, the project evolves, we will start optimizing, and particularly on those fees, which, by the way, we have already implemented layer twos. And so that should, in a way, hopefully address that challenge.
There's a question asking, do you have any updates on adding more liquidity to the CGT pool?
So some of the requirements of the community are related to, let's say, trading demands and so forth. So far, we took a very conservative approach, both because we try to focus on the features and the product, but also because we want to, in a way, avoid any misunderstandings in terms of us, pushing the purchase or so of such digital assets. Now, there is, of course, ideas, or there is an awareness to increase liquidity, and there is also an awareness to increase the amount of assets that we're bringing to our platform. At our end, we're always asking ourselves, what is the most impactful way to do so? So we concluded that by onboarding a fantastic new asset, basically adding liquidity, partnering up with a new protocol, and perhaps even doing market making could, in a way, actually move the needle. And so this is in a way what we're planning and preparing, and we're quite excited about that. Of course, some of these milestones are, in a way, dependent upon third parties. And what this means is that you basically don't have a say until this third party conference sends you the LOI and so forth. But this is, in a way, the idea, and this is what we're working for, and we're excited to pull that vision through. Yes.
That's the question I have here. What does your funding runway look like? And are you looking to fund any new rounds?
So when it comes to the company funding, the idea here has been, to go for a product first, customer first, revenue first, and traction first. And we were very fortunate to have strong backing initially. Also, the founders committed significant capital. So we remained somewhat independent. And this also meant that we were not forced to, let's say, scale massively before actually hitting product market fit. The problem we get in that so early stage is that many of these companies that, in a way, even raise funds actually had to shut down. And so sometimes it takes time for innovation to develop and to get that, product market fit. I feel Curio has hit that now with the idea that you pitch, these asset originators, hey, you don't need to sell your asset. You can earn yield on that, or you can earn rewards by tokenizing it. And so we're very excited to have the support of an accelerator called Genius X, who is doing introductions. We're very excited to have already funding from some very renowned funders of crypto projects that took their idea from basically hackathon to a couple of $1 billion in valuation. So they have a lot of expertise. They're doing introductions. We're prioritizing these calls. The reality is that we're really customer revenue oriented. So this is first always. And for instance, right now that we have found this commodity player, we're making sure this goes live and smoothly. And many of these calls with VCs is basically just, time consuming. And so you want to make sure you don't focus the core competence of your business, which is adding value to a customer and therefore generating hopefully revenue and also profit. And so, so this is in the pipeline. We've been the market right now is probably not optimal, and so we've been very careful with our liquidity, with our team decisions, and so forth, in order to make sure to stretch or capital and so forth.
I think we can wrap it up there.
Listen, it was a pleasure connecting with you, Shara. I appreciate the invitation to join this fire chat, to share some words with the community. I see some recognized faces, Bob, Bartle, Million, Fofo. I'm very thankful for all the community members who are following our traction, who are suggesting ideas. I want to conclude by, sharing that, many of these ideas have ultimately shaped the future and shaped our project. They have been considered. Some of them are not yet implemented, but they are well heard of. And yeah, ultimately, looking back, I feel it's really about timing, and I feel timing is getting prime. So now it's about really working to secure all these projects we have already somehow completed, and to launch them basically. And so I want to also share greetings from my co-founder, Vladimir, who I have called today. And yeah, thank you, everyone, and wish you a lovely day.